of the same colonial Berlin conference hijack, because the whole clout is still there. Don't care if the League of Nations was destroyed and with it the Berlin conference. IMF came in after that and put back the pressure. That is why one of the things within the Durban, the first thing you mentioned is debt relief. Because this is what the communities of African descendants, them, population are faced with the economy. What IMF shackle we up under. So we under neo-colonial and neo-slavery conditions where it is now being demanded to be redressed.
Greetings, honorable family. This is a public announcement. Jah Consuming Fire, brand new EP out now by Ija Star, featuring artists like Empress Matiposa out of the VI Virgin Island. This EP consists of 7 tracks. Songs like Life, No Dignity, 360 Degrees, Plea My Cause. This EP is out on all digital download platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Amazon, and much more. 360 Degree is blazing. Temperature so high. We are steam and blaze with Charlie Sana, Hail Selassie I. Out now, Jah Consuming Fire. Check it out.
No call me no dark or trust me, fool. You not have to rate this.
Blessed love, warm welcome, honorable family. This is another edition of the Mindset Program, and it's a great honor to have the item here. It's also a great honor to have my royal and honorable guest, Virgin from out of Jamaica, Rastafari Virgin. He's a member of the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress. He's also a member of the Rastafari Millennium Council. And I'm talking about no other prophet than Honorable Prophet Greg. Blessed love, my Lord. Warm welcome.
Yes, beloved one, do give thanks and, for the invite as usual. The mindset moving through same way. And as per usual, within the foundation of respect, I greet and salute everyone in the name of the Most High Emperor Selassie Jah Rastafari Foundation.
Rastafari.
It's the balance of the rebirth going through Empress Menin as for Selassie. So Holy Emmanuel I Selassie I the Rastafari, give thanks for the invite, give thanks to be here. Give thanks to be up front and live and direct.
My Lord, glorified. It's a great honor to have the eye here, my Lord. I hear so much about the eye, and to meet the eye this way, it's an honor and a great pleasure, having the eye on the platform, my Lord, so that, we can share, information that will uplift I and I as a people and also as a global nation, my Lord. So, give thanks. Rastafari. Yes, Honorable Prophet Greg. So, talk to me about, Rastafari. How did that start out for the eye? When did that start for the eye?
Well, basically, the foundation of it really manifests in Clarendon, where even Iman is right now. Having left this journey within the Babylon settings, you don't know how Rastafari move things already have and I find myself located in the Clarendon link up. So from there, so now we link with the Honorable Priest Brown. I think there is some recent interview with him because he reside in Clarendon as well. Even linked up with the Bingi family down at Scotch Pass.
Yes, sir.
And from there on now we start to work some program. Brasmanga. It was a good link up now to start up a program, Cutting Edge Cultural Unity in Maypen. I think there's an anniversary for Black History Month, So there's a still slot there in every February where the ones gather. So basically the momentum gather from there. but within the faithful aspect of things, you know,
Yeah.
the faith is really Bobo Shanti. So even with the tradition of Rastafari, I and I had to go forward to the Congress, you know, and see it up in the sense of the duties of honoring the whole operation and the legacy of the Congress, although still battling. You don't know for the independence of man residing in Clarendon. So even at that time now, and I did have to even sit up in the Congress, still though operating and recognized within the office of the prophet. That is where I met that declaration and sit up in those works of the prophet. And because of the same works now that is going through even now, within the reasoning of the presentation down in Clarendon as swapback, them call it swapback rallies. You know, once within the, as you say, Black History Month, we invite special guests. So it was really a vibrant energy towards Rastafari, the fullness of Rastafari, the mission of Rastafari. And it is from really there now, the continuity and the legacy, linking in now with the Congress reality as a member within the office of the prophet now. You find things now begin to escalate come 2001. I believe that is one of the most significant year for the Rastafari movement in general. Because that year was the year when the United Nations World Conference against Racism and Xenophobia took place in South Africa. I believe it was in late August into September, that dealt with the matter of the injustices looking at colonialism and chattel slavery, and laid out the foundation where remedies can be attained to from the heads of government levels, you don't know United Nations. So at that forum, at that conference, 168 nations signed on to the Durban Declaration. And from there now, paragraph 158 outline the remedies and the program to activate, starting with debt relief coming out of most likely and obviously the IMF program of structural adjustment, which impact most of the developing countries which are African descendant based, leading down to the last aspects of the last three of it is with restitution of artifacts that were stolen from the continent, dealing with human trafficking of women and children, and then the final one is facilitating return and welcome return from ones from the African diaspora, you know. So that basically boils down to the return of I&I, the rights of return. So that was the framework now that opened again the doors to look at the negotiation from government to government levels, you know, in dealing with the issue of reparation, repatriation, and the like, continuing the Back to Africa program that initiated itself from the 1958 Nyabingi Order Convention that led into the 1961 Back to Africa mission. So basically, in the setting of workmanship now, in the role of being an honorable prophet, this is where I find the necessary duty now to continue this process as an honorable prophet for the Congress to carry out these essential works for the mission of Rastafari.
Can
I want to
ask the I do?
Yes, man.
Why the high haven't pick up the role of a leading priest, you know?
All right. Well, I give thanks because that was basically what Iman was meant to address right now. Because after the insert of that Durban Declaration, because the mission to Africa, even a technical report was issued in 1962. However, the Jamaica independence of August locked down the whole of that. So there was no mission to Africa again.
Again, true.
So it was the Durban now that opened the doors again in 2001. That at that conference now, NGOs, 40% of ones them who attended were non-government entities, civil body representative, indigenous people, declaring these rights where they were being impacted by colonialism, chattel slavery. So it's out of that now. Documents came forward, the Durban Declaration and Program of Action that requires now civil bodies to put forward their documentation and claims for redress. So naturally, the one who attended was Sister Barbara Blake Hannah. I think she went on the delegation with the government, coming back with those documentation and introduce it at the Haile Selassie High School, because that is where the CRO, or rather the RCO, the Rastafari Centralizing Organization, had their headquarters and meetings. So she presented this information at one of those meetings. And it is from there now, we who attended it now, because from we hear that we know say, yeah man, everything stand up and say, this is it, this is where I negotiation, we open again, because government, they lock it down. So I received the documents and carried them up directly to the Congress, because as I said, that is where I connect. Don't care if they live in a Clarendon, we move around. But once important matters of this nature arise, we take it to the Congress. And presenting it to Honorable Priest Jesse Jesus. He was at the time in 2002, 2003 within the palace in jail. So I went straight to Jesse, we call him Jesse, Honorable Jesse, Priest Jesse.
Yes, sir.
And present to him the documents. The Honorable Priest Brown was there as well. So it is from that occasion now that I was issued, stamped a constitution, and went with the blessing to say, go forth and carry out the work of King Emmanuel Charles Edward, the work as his father. That was the instruction given the constitution. So because of the nature of the work, as a statesman, because the prophet duty is statesmanship, governance, dealing with governmental aspect of things. It is from that time to this time, the office of the prophet maintain that integrity to carry out that focus mission towards governance, statesmanship in dealing with the matter of repatriation and reparation. And I'm going to share two more little things with the eye how to cement that. Out of that documentation now and presentation of the Durban Declaration, here comes the Rastafari Global Meeting of 2003, when all of this now was brought to the attention of the international family. Everyone gathered, and it was there now a panel discussion that I made that presentation outlining the importance of repatriation, etc., focusing what we need to do as the community now in preparing a document now to submit to the United Nations. Prior to that though, the Congress already established a 4-point agenda program and a 17-page petition to the OAU from 1991. So that petition looked to represent Black people, not just Rastafari, Black people rights for the return. So that even link it more strenuous and more strong for the reserve to maintain the integrity of the office of the prophet in going forward, because we have to now link with the people them.
True.
It's not just Rastafari.
True,
so
true.
It is from that foundation now, I went forward now, linking with the Jamaica Reparation movement, specifically who had that duty, because those documents, them, this is what they extract now out of that Durban conference. So for I now to deal with as the people, because it is the victim who must declare and claim the redress for these atrocities for over 500 years. So the duty now is for the people now to prepare representation and the demands, and hence now within that framework of the Jamaica Reparation movement, I am specifically indicated I not deal with no Jamaica thing. is the Rastafari community mission. I and I depend and will work towards getting a document, compilation document, so we can get this into the United Nations where I and I claims can be represented. So that is basically it, Honorable.
Rastafari. How do I interpret, the spiritual and political dimension of repatriation in this time, my lord, especially for people who may never physically return to Africa?
All right, and that's a wonderful question. Look at the reality of the speech by the emperor.
Yeah.
I'm going to take two examples of how it ties in. Starting with the speech at the inauguration of the OAU. The emperor had declared that within aspect of the speech, he said, Africa has now reborn as a free continent, and Africans have now been reborn as free people. He said, those Africans who held unswervingly to a vision of an Africa emancipated from political, economic, and spiritual domination will be remembered and be revered wherever Africa meet. So even in that speech, him say, who reject also the judgment passed upon them by the colonizers. So we know the whole framework now of removing from that dominance of white supremacy, European dominance of chattel slavery and colonialism is three aspects of our liberation that needs to be addressed to get holistic emancipation. So this thing goes right back to the 1958 convention, because here it is now. The emperor himself declared political emancipation from colonial dominance.
Yes, I.
Economic emancipation from European colonialism, and also spiritual. So the spiritual aspect of this emancipation is where Rastafari rise up now to address that matter, because in 1930, when the emperor was crowned and Marcus Messiah Garvey declared to his followers in his newspaper, say, I and I must go and rally around Emperor Rastafari. Garveyites within the foundation of the movement, you're talking Howell, Hines, Hibbert, and Dunkley as the forerunner, the four peer, and the four wall. They were Garveyites. Howell now became the more prominent of the four. And by 1937, the government of the day in Jamaica started to complain to the monarchy. Said there is a cultism rising in Jamaica named Rastafari. Now look at the word, cultism. And that clearly specifically address spirituality. Because when you call people cult and all them things, you talk about some little religious fanatic.
Yeah.
So from there, them start to recognize now, because they complain that we were declaring the emperor as God. And at that time, the Hoylites, them, all of those one, them, they say Christ in his kingly character return. So that showcases the spiritual aspect of things now, because we don't identify the economics with the honorable prophet Marcus Garvey. No one can go around that foundation of Pan-Africanism, what he did from the West, in moving this mission to Africa, which I and I take up now within the spiritual aspect of things, declaring the divinity of the emperor. And the political aspect of it now, giving the father of Africa, knowing that the throne room and the 1955 revised Ethiopian constitution that the emperor established, outlining the political power, because it is out of the throne room, the constitution shows that he has the rulership over both the economics, which is the parliament structure, and over the church, which he established. And Article 70 shows the outline of that crown council operation, which has to respond to him. So the second aspect of the speech, so that is the first one. In 1966 now, when he came to Jamaica, he came reclaiming his royal subject and declared to the Parliament of Jamaica that we are not only just Africans, but Ethiopian blood relatives now. And in so be doing now, the onus now comes now back to the people to decide which monarchy, because from the emperor come down off him throne and come to the parliament, heads of state, and declare that he owns Ethiopians as bloodline and represent them. It is now for the people to declare to the governments now, particularly starting with Jamaica, based on that speech, to declare which majesty and high I and I is going to serve. Because the head of state at that time was Queen Elizabeth. She's still, well, the regime under the King Charles now, right? Is still the head of state until the Republic thing, according to what them said them do. Chip in. But the still head of state now is still the crown of Britain. And we as I and I as Rastafari, from that time, even prior to that, from the 1930s, declares, no, the emperor is I and I divine sovereign. And our sovereignty is Ethiopia. And all of that was now fleshed out at the 1958 convention. This was the first phase now, because that convention now, there was a West Indies Federation election going through to delink themselves from the colonial power, same way now. And we said at that time, no, but if you're going to that warm to emancipation, warm to our rights to self-determination, to repatriate, you never fulfilled that duty. So that convention in 1958, headed by the leaders under the Nyabingi Order at that time, because that is when the Nyabingi Order was officially unveiled publicly. Before that, prior to that, it was like Kumina, African spiritualism, headed by the Hoylites and things. But the Nyabingi Order, that first convention of March to combat the West Indies Federation, was saying, the Rastafari is still demanding the fullness of emancipation, even as how it is written out in I Royal Rastafari Creed. So, in essence now, the spiritual aspect, as how the I had asked the question, is that foundation that Rastafari links into the prophecy. Because here you have now the emperor declaring at the OAU inauguration that I reborn. No, what is reborn? I want really meditate what that really means. For I and I as African and the African continent itself to be reborn. Now, within the levels of the church people then, this is a language where them use to say you're born again.
Yes, I.
You're baptized. You're born again. So here's the spiritual aspect of things that the emperor is invoking at the OAU, inclining about the rebirth. And once one reborn, in take on his indigenous identity, his sovereign identity, his divine identity. Because you're reborn into yourself, who you are as a person. So once you are reborn as an African, you shed the colonial attachments and revert to the days when Africa was never colonized. So you touch back to your indigenous foundation, your royal sovereign foundation of royal African sons and daughters before the invasion of colonialism. That is a powerful statement when the emperor said, I and I reborn. And once keep looking out of it. So the very rebirth now to capture everything politically, economically, and spiritually now is the mission now of total emancipation, what the emperor now has declared. And in Rastafari, we unapologetically, without any apology, we declare the emperor as how he stands as the father of the OAU. This is why we say as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, he is I and I, God Almighty, without any apology. Rastafari. So this just moved Rastafari now to take full control of the spiritual aspect of things, linking it forward to that speech. And as a matter of fact, you can even now link it into the Psalm 68.
But
Because Psalm 68 now, the spiritual aspect of it is where Marcus Garvey did declare in his declaration in his newspaper at the coronation. He said, right now, the psalmist has declared that prince and princesses shall get out of Egypt, and Ethiopia shall soon stretch forth their hands unto God. This is what him said. And we now must rally around Emperor Rastafari. This is what Marcus declared in his newspaper on the first Sunday after the coronation. And in the Emperor's Defense, 1941, Ethiopia Liberation Day, he declared that. He said, today is a day when Ethiopians are truly stretching forth their hands and heart unto God in thankfulness and in joy, fulfilling that very psalm. And that Psalm 68, which we declare as the emancipation psalm, is lodged within the Rastafari creed. Very significant indeed.
Rastafari. Yes, so let me ask the High Honorable Majesty. So the rebirth that the High is talking about, is that the inception of Rastafari now within Jamaica and the rest of the diaspora?
Yes, Rastafari is the rebirth, the return of identity, because we're not talking about dressing up looking like a European. The very locks, the tradition going straight to ancient Israel, the black house of Israel, even showcasing even the pharaohs of Egypt. When you look on the history of them, you see them in a locks and beards same way. But coming from the perspective of the black house of Israel, because all of that link up even into the very constitution of Ethiopia. When you read Article 1, the revised Ethiopian constitution, Article 1, declaring the empire, Article 2, declaring the linkages to the union between the Queen Makeba of Queen Sheba of Ethiopia and King Solomon, King David of Israel. That is written into the Constitution, Article 2. For sure, say, I and I carrying on the legacy of the black house of Israel. So that rebirth now is not just a figment of the imagination, it's a liberty where I and I start to live anciency and step forward up that covenant of even the separation of the dreadlocks and the image of anciency. And you find that in the books of Leviticus 19, Leviticus 21, in Numbers chapter 6, the Nazarite vow. So all of that anciency of the rebirth now is the rebirth of the black house of Israel rising.
My Lord, Rastafari. The eye say, the role within Rastafari elders and shaping Jamaica, spiritual and cultural landscape, today, my Lord, because the I mentioned early about when we had the repatriation on the board, and then independence came and knocked that off the board, push us back. And now today, we're seeing, that we have even been given land in Jamaica due to, atrocities that follow that follow coming up to 19 independence, my lord.
All right. Well, let us really put things into perspective. Because as I said, I and I coming from the emancipation struggle, not the independence. Emancipation, the act that brought 20 million pounds sterling from the British government and monarchy to redress the plantocracy that them control.
Yes, sir.
That did not address the resolve of emancipation of I&I for parents. because the comparative analysis, if you're going to use now, what replaced that settings of forced slavery was indentured servants coming from majority speaking the Indians. They, on their contractual arrangement now, when they finished doing them work, they were returned. And you're talking about returning to a place named Calcutta. And in reaching Calcutta, you have to circumnavigate the continent of Africa to reach Calcutta, India, in returning that indentured force. As a matter of fact, the last ship to move and return was in 1954 to return the last Indians indentured servants. Look at that. The compromise the Indians them got, if them never want to return, was land.
See it.
That is the compensation that was given to them on the emancipation arrangement. If they decide, said, no, give me the land, now return, you will stay yourself. And then maintain them culture here because you have them celebration. I go on now in a Jamaica about the Indians. Now, look at the Africans' plight. Them try to put me back into apprenticeship. Yeah, you see, nothing of any land as a compromise. And the first priority should have been repatriation.
Yes,
because to compensate the plantocracy, the majority of the costs that was being borne is the cost for transport. So you reimbursing the people and the plantocracy from that cost because it's auction, your auction, I 4 parents, to get your money, to cover back your costs, to travel.
True.
So that bulk of costing now is really transportation costs, where you should have used now and return under emancipation, I. That was never done. You never give a land. You start to force into employment again as apprentice. So at all times now we are forced back into labor.
Slavery.
No redress. So that is why I say everything now comes back into this dispensation at time, starting with 1958, when they were trying to relinquish themselves another arrangement of political rulership now. The taskmasters now want to take charge. So the local politician them want to rule under the West Indies Federation now to take charge of operating the whole settings. We say no, we still want emancipation, where's repatriation, and the convention that took place now. The Honorable Prince Emmanuel Charge Bonga Eddie at that time, on March the 20th, issued a telegram to the Queen demanding repatriation. So all of that is the evidence that we're still fighting for that. So in a sums up now, all of that was crushed in Jamaica's independence. As a matter of fact, when the even follow-up mission to Africa was to take place in 1963, because it's £12,000 the government used in 1961 to send off that delegation, with a promise you're going to have a 2-year follow-up. The change of government now and the Jamaica win independence now saw the GLP import and the Bustamante. So when the delegation approached him now for the return mission, them locked it down and said them now even up back to Africa mission again and independence them are deal with now.
See.
All of that get crushed until the Durban happened in 2001. You talk about the currency, this is the reality of the currency. Because it's forced now, the language now, to get back on track to deal with the redress of colonialism and chattel slavery. So if the government now are forced to deal with the Durban Declaration and the program of action that 168 nations signed on to that in 2001, the remedies will have to look at the facilities in the returning of the residents of Africa. Because obviously, colonialism and chattel slavery address an African issue, not a Caribbean issue. The Caribbean impact was the indentured peoples of the Caribbean, which were the Taino Indians at that time. So if you're dealing with it from an African perspective now, as the ones them who were impacted by the transatlantic slave trade, then you're talking about the African Holocaust that needs to be redressed.
My Lord.
And hence now it brings back everything to the table. And how significant it is that out of that Durban Declaration, Caricom had to establish the first conference on reparation, albeit it was in 2013. And by the submission of, and Caricom really is the new federation. That is basically what the federation morphed itself into now, Caricom, that leadership framework. So that 2013 conference that happened in St. Vincent and the Grenadines was responding to the Durban Declaration of 2001. So obviously the communities had to involve because the claimants them going to have to come forward with documentation. And it is these papers that were submitted, and I must insert right now that Iman had the privilege to attend that conference and present, you know, and we can go into more details with that part. But out of that presentation of that first conference rose a 10-point agenda. And based on the submission of papers and documents by the claimants, I, repatriation had to be a part and parcel of that agenda based on documentation. So the connectivity and the negotiation now of the reality of who we are as African descendant now comes now crushing home to the African leaders who now has to address this matter, whether them like it or not. And it is in these sort of developments now, you hear the language at the United Nations levels. For instance, the United Nations Working Group of People of African Descent. That was established in 2002. The 35th session of it took place last December. You have also now the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. Now that just rise up now to deal with the decade for African people that was declared by the United Nations. So you see the whole language now coming out of the Durban 2001 now have to shift shape and come right back to the African identity. So Caricom could not escape that. And it is now lodged at the United Nations. The Permanent Forum is looking at the fourth session, April just gone, and it has now successfully established another decade for people of African descent, where all of this matter now is being addressed, because where it is now lodged at in the negotiation and these forums at the United Nations level is all being targeted around reparatory justice. Look at the AU now. The AU just this year, Africa Union, has declared this year for the year of Africa reparatory justice. 2025 from the Durban Declaration of 2001, which is in South Africa. And the AU just picking it up now in 2025. Very significant. And I must mention, to put the icing on the cake, so to speak, this today, the 7th of September 2025, is the second summit that is happening at Addis Ababa as we speak between the Africa Union and the Caribbean leaders in dealing with the subject repertorial justice. It is happening as we speak. So the whole consciousness of the movement of Rastafari shaped the framework of where we are now. And the clamoring for information now is being sought from the Rastafari community because of the advocacy that we were doing towards this matter of redress.
And my lord, give thanks, Baba. So today now in Ethiopia, Zine, as you say, you know, Caricom is there. Where does Rastafari now? Where do I fit in all of that?
All right. Let us look at the reality now. 1961, there were 9 delegates on that mission to Africa, right? I can, obviously the Rastafari community, you have representation from the UNIA, you have the EWF being represented as well. So let us just show that levels, just use those three groups. You can envision the magnitude of the levels of, representation that was moving forward in 1961.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you see? In that motion of thing was the first proposal of a $300 million grant to resettle the African diaspora. That was put forward now, and that was put forward to the Queen of England and how she responded. Importantly, that is how the record showed the demands of redress for repatriation in bulk. What had happened at that time in 61 was a technical report outlining from the Jamaica perspective government how to look at a project targeting the Rastafari movement with the management authority of the land grant being the EWF Incorporation, Ethiopian World Federation Incorporation, how to settle a family of four. And this negotiation was raised to the emperor. A negotiation was surrounding an agricultural project to help shore the economics viability and also the integration between the ones them coming in into Shashemene and living there. All of that was shelved by the independents. Now we have today all of this aspect now happening at the AU Caricom Summit now. Shashemene residents now is in the forefront of voices because of the membership now of Caricom, where you say now repatriates living on Shasha, putting forward now the language of repertorial justice now, demanding all of this now to come on board to help change the framework of this migration status, which is impeding now a harsh cost mechanism because it is still locked into a migration setting. There is a process now happening between the membership of the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporation and the established Jamaica Rastafarian Development Community, the JRDC, that has now established their footprints now as returning residents. Now, there was a declaration and an issuing recently, I don't know how recently it was, but the Ethiopian government in addressing the matter of long residing ones them in Ethiopia for many, many years without Ethiopian citizenship. They have interjected and created a proclamation now identifying with the registered entity, the GRDC, as well as the Ethiopian Incorporation, and how to resolve the membership long staying in Ethiopia to see how best they can issue Ethiopians identification card. So this is what the JRDC is championing now, this cause at this current summit that is taking place. They are revealing now that struggle of the fees now, which has, I believe they said had now, they have increased the fees recently, which has become strenuous to the ones them who exist there. And chances are, once you can't pay a fee, don't care what you're going to lose.
True.
That official identification, and you're going to face the challenging of staying and remaining in Ethiopia. So what this summit now has done, given the fact now repertorial justice now is the forefront agenda, and the AU has taken up that mantle to declare this year, we now have the opportunity to bring this levels of negotiation that is already at the United Nations levels into the AU Caricom Summit now, to figure out how to insert these rights, to put it to rights of return, and to shape the migration framework and platform language into law. So this is a crucial juncture into I history right now, happening in Ethiopia and touching the AU, because it is an AU Caricom summit. So it is not only just going to be addressing the Ethiopian plight, but also the other migration and migrants in all of the AU states who are facing similar conditioning.
True.
So the language of reparation now, which we are demanded from this colonial atrocity, is where now we are pressuring the AU to take up.
Rastafari. We're here with Honorable Prophet Greg. He's my honorable guest on the Mindset program today. We're touching some serious points and topics, and I guess that's the reason why you're not hearing him right now. You probably just seen his visual in, because what we're talking about is serious. Wow.
Don't give thanks. Yeah. Yes, we're back.
Rastafari. That is exactly what I was saying, my lad. That is because of what the points that they are touching. Why the breaking communication a while ago, my lad. But I was on the point of reparation and repatriation, my lad. So I could continue, because right now, Zane, as I was reiterating about the cost, that ones who are on the land, they have to pay for the legality as indigenous African people, coming from out of the diaspora, and then have to be struggling now with all these costs is not a just thing. So to see that Rastafari, Virgin and Sistering is making the headway in agitating for these things to be implemented and changed, is a great thing to see, my lad, because no one else is going to do it unless I really push our foot forward, my lad, because we are the ones that are facing these struggles, when we're in Africa, and coming from out of the Caribbean, returning back home, ones shouldn't have to face those type of situation, my lord. So it's great that the item agitate to the AU, with these issues. Far right.
Yes, because as we said earlier, this is what was going on at Durban in 2001, to show you the levels where the United Nations has already taken it, in the sense of human rights violation. So that's what it really when come down to, remember, say, the Nuremberg trial that look at the Nazi dealing with the Jews, them that birthed the state of Israel. Is 822 million that was awarded to start resettle 500,000 to start the state of Israel. So naturally, the recourse now that we are demanding, you have that on your records. And then from 1958-61 mission, we said, so we set about a proposal of 300 million to deal with the atrocities of the transatlantic slave trade and the inhumane descriptor of what you were imposing on I. I think it's the U.S. Constitution that says Africans are just 3/4 of a human being or something to that matter. You want to misquote. But that is the levels of how they were regarding I as African descendant. So this matter of redress now lies slowly on I, the people. Not the institution, because the institution is what enslaved I.
My lord.
It is the people that must stand now and demand this levels of representation for redress. There's an act that was also established in the United Nations in 2005. The United Nations Act for Restitution. Paragraph 19 shows the violation because we already declared and working out even with the UN human rights portfolio that slavery, chattel slavery, is a crime against humanity without any apology. It is an act of genocide. And of such, once it is declared, there is no statute of limitation when it comes to redress. Or could have 500 years, 1,000 years. Once you have that case to rise up, that is not dealt with. Because even the state of Israel, that was created with 822 million. What was the history of the Jews being resettled now in the land of Palestine? What was that history? So you're talking about a reality of a crime against humanity. That the very act of restitution now, out of the United Nations in 2005, has declared how to resettle the victim of human trafficking, which is basically modern slavery. So this is where the claimants, I, the vanguard, because Rastafari now has taken up this vanguard, It was a Back to Africa mission to an economic Pan-African movement by Marcus Garvey and the earlier ones then. How to move it economically. But now you're talking a matter of redress by repayment of Holocaust. So this is the mantle that I took up now, and it was first addressed at the convention in 1958 when we demand repatriation by the telegraph that was sent to the Queen, which really ignited the mission to Africa of 1961. So the matter now at the United Nations level, the AU surprisingly is only now declaring this year for the year of our repertorial justice, 2025, when all of this took place in South Africa, Durban in 2001. So we are hoping, and from our pressure now, because of this summit now that is happening as we speak, are the AU leaders now saying that they are recognizing the African diaspora as their children and are now moving to reclaim I within the identification of redress as Indigenous Africans demanding redress rather than returning migrants having to deal with a fee. That's a different language ball game now,
Yes,
where
sir.
you will have to take up this matter into the International Court of Justice to demand the redress for colonial atrocities. However it want to pay out or however it want to be dealt with. I'm going to show you the example why I'm saying that too. Look at the example that we have now. When the 20 million pounds sterling was paid to the plantocracy, we just find out the other day, 2015, that it was a loan. A loan that was presented to the British Treasury to finance the emancipation plantocracy compensation. That loan was paid off in 2015. You hear me say? 2015. And if you're going to pay it through the British Treasury, that means it is both the House of Lords and the House of Commons are involved. So you, as the rulership of Britain, cannot in any way declare that you are not involved with something that happened centuries ago. When you are now acknowledging that you just pay off the debt of emancipation in 2015, you can't say you can wash your hand of that responsibility when you are even using taxpayers' monies, Africans, to help pay off that loan. Because you can't tell I say the African diaspora wants them living in Britain and outside of your Commonwealth empire was not whether directly or indirectly involved in repaying that debt. You can't say that. because that was paid off through the British Treasury. So if you can accept and declare that, how are you now going to deny the other half that you never dealt with? Because just as how you compensate 20 million with your plantocracy, you should have compensated the other 20 million now with the African poor parents and ones who went through this as the redress. So this is what we are carrying to the table now at the levels of Caricom. All of this was rolled out in 2013, and hence we have the 10-point agenda outlining to address this matter. The AU now has picked it up and has acknowledged the work that Caricom is doing in addressing the Durban. And now only just coming on board now to fashion out and flesh out this second conference. The first one took place, the AU Caricom Summit took place in Nairobi, Nigeria, or Kenya rather, in 2021. So this one is the second one now, looking at repertoire justice, very important. So the matter now is really reaching to the pinnacle of where we must negotiate rights. Because having reached these levels at the AU, Caricom leadership level, the next step now, you're going to move that is into the United Nations demanding redress. That is the next obvious step. But you are just laying the platform now. How are you going to address the matter of returning residents? You cannot now continue looking to I and I now as migrants. That language have to shift. The policies have to shift. The whole operation of these fees have to go shift now. What we had suggested in our presentation, because we submit information and it was assisted in being submitted to this AU Caricom Summit. So we give thanks to the chairman, Rastaman, who is the current chairman for the Jamaica Rastafari development community on the ground now dealing with this matter. So he helped to assist us in addressing this summit now. For the first time, we are going to be addressing the AU. We are already addressed Caricom, but this is the council, Edamak, I should say. And only inserting this, not going into but because it is reflecting on the work of repatriation, we have to mention that, right? In what is being addressed. And as I said, the first aspect of the things is that the United Nations in making these submission demanding, because I should even insert that the United Nations Committee Eliminating Racial Discrimination, them call it CERDS for short. This is where the Durban Declaration is being monitored through that Human Rights Committee. So anything to do with repatriation, reparation, and as a matter of fact, Vereen Shepherd, who is of a Jamaican professor identity, she's now the current vice chair. I think she was chairperson of the CERD one time. She's now the current vice chair. So that sort of linkages now, not really say it's another advantage, but it helps assist us for the knowledge of how to continue with the CERDs, monitoring the Durban program. Because we as the claimant now have to know what to do in pressuring this thing for our rights. So all of this was done in 2013, where we submit documents and you have the 10-point agenda. Only the problem is the lead of Caricom is not really reporting back to the community. The official report that was addressing the 10-point agenda, the second conference that happened in Antigua and Barbuda, addressing the 10-point agenda. We don't get back that official report from government as yet. And we still want it because it's something, the information that we need to continue our advocacy and activism. So now that the AU Summit and Caricom Summit, the second one, is going through, we have to be presenting these issues in front of the situation and let the AU leaders ask the question, are you now seriously looking to reclaim the diaspora as a language, as your children, and not just some sort of economic relationship and say people of African descent? Are you seriously looking to reclaim I&I and push forward that agenda, which will take on a different magnitude and framework and language. Because you're talking about the rights for restitution in reclaiming your kidnapped and abducted children by colonialism and then put we in a chattel slavery, the worst type of slavery you could have even imagined under human condition. So it's you, the leaders, they must wake up now as African leaders representative and look into what the OAU was trying to establish under what just said, this rebirth, and how we must address the total emancipation politically, economically, and spiritually. You couldn't link we out of that because all of that now is fleshing out your divine human person under rebirth, who you are, and you can be no less than a sovereign person of the African side. So how is it the leader is not reclaiming them children to that level? So this is a wake-up call if the AU seriously looking at this year for the year for repertoire justice. This must be a serious wake-up call, and it's I and I, the people, have to give them that share.
Rastafari. And how did the I looked at the year of return that Ghana initiated? I think it was 2018, 19.
Yes, those we believe these are stepping stones. I think that it involved a Joseph project too as well. If my memory serves me right. So Ghana is looking at how to still try to create a language, but because of the conditioning on the continent, now we have to be realistic. Because the African economics, because of the same colonial Berlin conference hijack, because the whole clout is still there. Don't care if the League of Nations was destroyed and with it the Berlin conference. IMF came in after that and put back the pressure. That is why one of the things within the Durban, the first thing you mentioned is debt relief. Because this is what the communities of African descendants, them, population are faced with the economy. What IMF shackle we up under. So we under neo-colonial and neo-slavery conditions where it is now being demanded to be redressed. So what we are saying to them, the AU leadership have to take a look at all of these things and renegotiate these sort of economic arrangement for a better deal to manage the continent, because you cannot possibly have the richest continent in the world and your people are poor. The economics is poor. What we see is the example shown by Burkina Faso very recently of what you do by taking charge to nationalize your wealth. Because every country, when it comes down to identifying the wealth of the nation, comes down to two fundamental resources that you have to own and manage: your human resource and your natural resource. If you do not own these two fundamental properties of asset, nation asset, you're going to find yourself in problem. And if you check the continent of Africa, when it comes to owning the national wealth, the national resources, I see how many African countries can claim that they own them national resources, the minerals, the oil, you name it.
True.
The richest continent by mismanagement has the poorest economies. And what about the people? What about the intellect of the people? Your national treasury. You want to look at the restitution of artifacts. Well, it's the people that create the artifacts, the human resources. But because of the constraint and the economic situation, you have more migration leaving out of Africa, going to the metropolis of the European countries. We are saying, if you capitalize on the example given by the Burkina Fasos and what they are trying to do, to nationalize, then you will start to create African metropolises that the diaspora will look to run into, and reverse this economic trend. And this is what the example Burkina Faso is showing, how to take charge of owning not only just the human resources, because they are talking about DNA to bring home their diaspora. Once the DNA proves that you are indeed Burkina Faso, citizen, then say come home, we take in right away and fit you in. So you have both the human resources and the natural resources being addressed by Burkina Faso. We are saying the AU must take up this responsibility and show say you're really reclaiming I and not just an AU 6 region initiative. That language must change.
My Lord, Rastafari. Yes, I. Let me ask this, Honorable Majesty. As a author, what inspire your writing, and how do they serve as the mission of the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress and also the Millennium Council, my lord.
All right, for Rastafari is an easy subject matter, realistically, because the expectations were already there, moving within an Ethiopian consciousness. Marcus Garvey only came in to add more fuel to that Ethiopian consciousness, where you have now the black churches, them, the Baptist, them, Ethiopian Baptist church, them thing. They took on that Psalm 68 reality, and started to use it now, where it said, prince and princesses shall come out of slavery again, and Ethiopians shall stretch forth them unto God.
Yeah.
Rastafari now flesh this out now within a more realistic realization now with the coronation of Emperor Haile Selassie I, because now we have Ethiopia. Now we have the monarchy. The prince and the princesses now is recognizing to a kingdom, because we have the emperor being the king of kings. So the Rastafari movement took it to the highest level of recognizing divinity returning in the flesh. From the Congress perspective now, you have difference in spiritual identification. The two major defining factors is one, Christ in his kingly character, defining the emperor. And then the other one where the Congress now takes up the reality and saying that the emperor is the Almighty, based on even how I chant the Rastafari creed. So we hail our God Selassie, Jehovah God, the Rastafari, the Almighty God, the Rastafari, great and terrible God, the Rastafari, is the Almighty God. All of this is outlined within I creed consciousness. So these are the two main conceptualization, spirituality in defining who the emperor is. And it is within the Rastafari movement. This is where it is being recognized. So within I reality now, the interpretations now began after the coronation of 1930, where with I revert to the interpretation of the fulfillment of prophecies. So you find, so now Isaiah 9, 6 and 7 became to be a reality upon the throne of King David and upon his kingdom to add it and to establish it. 1930 reverberate that. The prophecies of Isaiah 43, when they talk about unto the north, unto the south, to the east, and to the west, hold not back. Bring my sons from afar and my daughters to the ends of the earth. When you check the reality of reclaiming from the four corners of the earth, the center is Africa. So if the children are being reclaimed by God, then we know, say, Psalm 68 come forward again. Ethiopians stretching forth them hands and heart unto God. And then you have the fullness now of Psalm 76, where it is clearly stated, in Judah shall God be known. That is very, very powerful.
My Lord.
In Israel, his name shall be great. In Salem shall be his tabernacle, but his dwelling place shall be Zion. Now that take it to a different dimension of from 2,000 years ago when Christ came. This is a different reality, what this psalm is portraying. And if you go to verse 11 in that psalm says, vow and pay unto the Lord thy God. Let all those who are round about him bring present unto him who are to be feared. Now that's an English translation. What is the Ethiopian interpretation of one who is to be feared? That is Rastafari. The name Rastafari means one who is to be feared. The head one, Rast being the creator, Tafari, one who is to be feared. So the very Amharic name is written right there in the very psalm to identify the time frame that I and I in this dispensation. And check it out again. Psalm 87. It says, his foundation shall be upon a holy mountain. The Lord God
Love is the
love the
gate of
gates of
Zion.
Zion
More than all the
more
dwellings
than
of
all the
Jacob.
dwellings of Jacob.
Yes.
Glorious things are spoken of thee, O city of God. Look at that, this declaration. Now, in the time of Jerusalem, under King David, Zion was known the city of the great king under King David. Now we have in the holy mountains, Zion now shall be known as the city of God. Because in that very psalm, it says the highest himself
Shall establish.
shall establish her, the highest himself, and that is not something of a spirit. This is a physical manifestation where Mount Zion is written into the constitution of Ethiopia, the revised one of 1955. So it is even written into law, Article 2, to show you that this is truly the branch of King David. There is no other constitution in the world that ties into the kingdom and legacy of the kingdoms of Judah and Israel coming from Jerusalem days. No other kingdom. So the only nation in the world to fulfill that prophecy as of the branch of King David, you're talking about Jeremiah 23, is Ethiopia, even as how it is written into law. Because that's what the Constitution means. You write it into law. And this law was presented in front of the nations of the world because Ethiopia became a member state of the United Nations. So all the nations of the world knew of this Constitution from 1955, declaring the righteous kingdom of King David, because it is tied to that relationship coming from the union of King Solomon and the Queen Makeda of Sheba. So all of this reality is where Rastafari is pivoting the connectivity of the prophecy into the reality. And the liberty of I and I going to anciency shows that the descriptor of I and I goes back to the description of the black house of Israel as described in Leviticus. Numbers, having the dreadlocks, the vow, the Nazarite vow. You understand the old turban and robe tradition that goes to the same Leviticus chapter 19, describing how the priests they must wear turban and robe and they must not cut them locks and shave them beard. I think you find that no, maybe that is Leviticus 21 and Leviticus 19 verse 27 you talk about that. But the two of them is there. Both the Israelites them history where show you say we must be dreadlock people them and the priests them. So when one take up Leviticus 19 and Leviticus 21, the reality of today, of yesterday, is Rastafari. And His Majesty don't declare, His Imperial Majesty don't declare, say this I and I rebirth. And as a matter of fact, we go as further to declare, say this revelation now and this fulfillment is already written in the chapter of Romans 11, where the expectation of the rise of the black host of Israel within the times of the Gentiles shall manifest by the coming of the deliverer of Zion. Now the times of the Gentiles is the time beginning when them crucify Christ. when Caesar come to power. So you can imagine the times of Rome now coming to Western Europe. The whole of them time, even to this day, we're still living in the times of the Gentiles. So it shows the manifestation now within the times of the Gentile. A deliverer of Zion shall come. And that is New Testament. You always hear church people talk, oh, you're not the Old Testament business. No, this is a big Romans chapter 11 New Testament talking about the deliverer of Zion.
Yes,
coming in this time to redeem the black house of Israel. So that expectation within the prophecy is what Rastafari preach when them start call with cult. When we start declare the emperor from 1930. But check this out now. How can they go around a constitution? That is law. So the very revised Ethiopian constitution, Article 4, declares that the emperor is sacred. And he must not be even attempt to be violated. You will be punished. And Article 126 declare that the name of the emperor must always be mentioned within the church called liturgy. And Rastafari liberty is tabernacle. And tabernacle means declaring the emperor without any apology. Jah Rastafari the Almighty. So it is all connected now within the liberty of reality of today and the fulfillment of the prophecies which I and I relate to. So the book, what I am the author of, is literally bringing all of that reality together. The fulfillment of the prophecies, linking into the current manifestation of why I and I declaring say, we Ethiopians shall return as prince and princesses gathering out of Babylon, which is Egypt. And by interpretation, Egypt, as declared in Exodus 20, really mean the house of bondage. So if you check the bondage with I and I going through now, you reach the Deuteronomy 28, when it states I and I would be taken again in ships. So all of that is the fulfillment of the transatlantic slave trade and then the expectation of the deliverer of Zion to come, which manifested 400 years after Columbus. Because 1492 was Columbus' encounter and barbarism. 1892 now is the birth, fulfilling Isaiah 9, 6 and 7 prophecy of what was expected to happen, where I and I declaring all of these manifestations. So I man even go as far within the interpretation of the prophecies to explain even to the Seventh-day Adventists why they were greatly disappointed in 1844 because of miscalculation of prophecies and not including a combination of what was to happen. And if they had inserted those combination of prophecies, which they say they are greatly disappointed, them say the great disappointment or so in 1844, they would have reached to the calculus of 1892. And we explain all of that in chapter 3. Yeah, man, so we connect the whole thing, them linking into all of these ones, Herbert W. Armstrong, and these ones, they're more heavy into the prophecies, right? And because they were more sabbatical oriented, these churches more Sabbath, so them go more deep into the prophecies more than the other church them within the colonial Christian teaching. So we could, we relate to these ones them, especially even the Seventh-day Adventists, for sure. I know the similarities, but at the same time, we know them never really connect. Like how and I, can connect everything to the prophecy and to the Constitution, for sure. So the law and the prophecies are real, manifesting King David righteous branch in this time.
Majesty.
Yes,
I put a lot of emphasis there on the Constitution. The Ethiopia Africa Black International, Africa, they have also a constitution. Zin emphasize that strict allegiance to its divine government. How the I reconcile, your involvement with other groups like, the Rastafari Millennium Council.
All right. when in 2003, when the Durban came in and the program of operation that needed to be done was delivered, you're talking about something that you have to now continue to address. The Congress from 1991 had written a petition to the OAU demanding the right for Africans to return. Now, I, God, and high priest unto the Most High, that is who Melchizedek is, priest unto the Most High, we declare all of this now. And as priest unto the Most High, the Christ image, the God, is manifested in King Emmanuel Charles Edward. So all of this connectivity shows that it reflects back to 1958 when he demanded repatriation, linking now to 1991 petition. So the Durban now only bring all of this together now to the United Nations levels, where the same advocacy have to be done. And Jadon declared in his letterhead that he is not only just king of the races, he's king of the masses. So this levels of representation, you could have cried cursing, you're going to have to deal with it.
Rastafari.
Yeah, you see? So when honorary priest just was divide the thing and the charter to go ahead and do it, the Constitution declares it. You cannot be affiliated with any entity that is not working for the redemption of black people. That is the EABIC Constitution. So once you are dealing with freedom, redemption, and international repatriation, there's a working relationship to be done. And that is where we are at the United Nations levels, where the work of EDAMAC is concerned. Because it ties into the program demanding repatriation. And I'm going to show you an example of that. Every 1st of August, there is a march, the Congress Emancipation Day March. Right? When this Durban thing dropped, 2011 saw one of the biggest march happen in Jamaica when the Congress link up motorcade, big 2011, and link up all of that now relationship coming together of the Rastafari community. We end up doing a rally in Spanish Town, one of the biggest march that ever happened. And this is because the consequences of dealing with the Durban issue came more and more aggressive to the table. And it was the time during the same foundation of what needs to be done in addressing this matter. Because the global reason of 2003, that had to be dealt with to create the document. Yeah, you see? So it is the formation now of how this documentation needs to be developed now in addressing the United Nations. That is where it reached now, where the matter have to be addressed now, the United Nations level to address the Durban Declaration. And it went further now to show you a vivid example of that reality. 2014, there was a Rastafari UK movement, August 1st, March, that took place in London, England.
Yes, I
was involved with that also because the same documentation that was submitted at the Caricom first conference of reparation was also handed in, because we have our soldier at the time, the Prophet Jabib, very much involved in that sort of settings, where it was the Congress that led off the whole thing. Big march, locked down the whole of London,
Yes, sir. I remember.
And I was at the Congress drafting up the letters and the documents, physically at the Congress when these things were done and happening, to show you the connectivity that was going down to deal with this matter of repatriation and reparation. It's only because of the Ganja, this medical Ganja thing we come in 2015 afterwards, that sort of relation, strong bond, kind of get shift because of that setting. But when it comes to the Durban, the whole AIM conference of dealing with the mandate, that was the setting that the relationship was going strong towards dealing with the matter of Durban. So the onus now was how to engage now, not just the races as king of the races, because even that had to be done, but also the masses. So 2014 is the example of the energy of the spirit. But what has to manifest now within the realization of representation of rights. And you cannot go around that reality.
My Lord.
It has to be done. And now we have the AU Caricom Summit. Who going to deal with all of these things? Who must address it? Who must put the demands? It's I and I, the people, same way. So it's not something we can shun. It's something that is real right now to deal with. And we can't shun it. We have to approach it, but we have to know how to address it now. Consciously, diplomatically, realistically, and collectively. Because the Africa Union said they are dealing with too much splinter group. They need to see some form of collective bargaining arrangement coming forward. And check the reality of today. And I'm not going to say this out of any form of disrespect for any African liberation movement, any groups of sort. No, I'm not moving to any form of say they don't exist. No, that is not my point. The point I am saying that if you check the reality of the Rastafari movement today, the numbers of Rastafari worldwide, how can you pick that now and compare that to the other organization, for example, the UNIA membership, compared to where Rastafari communities numbers reach in the world today? You see how vast a number we are. So imagine if we not moving to organize and centralize this reality now in addressing this matter that we have championed from the 1930s come forth. It won't show us that we not do nothing.
True.
But we are working.
True.
The evidence is the documentation that we're presenting. But the magnitude of the community is so large that we have to be on social media, give thanks for even this mindset program to be showcasing these realities, to connect with the community of work that necessary has to be done. Because if we don't do it as the community and I as the people, it's institutions going to do it for it. And so they're working on I behalf.
True.
So we have to, it's not push or go and push aside the realities, you know. We have to work diligently to the legalities that are in place that connect what needs to be done as a collective force. Because we're not disrespecting the Constitution and the legal frameworks that are in place.
My Lord. I mentioned two important things. Zane, there I speak about the numbers of Rastafari. And there I mentioned Ganja. Zane, one at a time we're going to deal with them. What's the thoughts and the numbers of Rastafari in South Africa? And that is only one African state.
Yeah, I think that is what remember, sir. I think they were mentioned like over 2 million or something of that number or near 4. Well, that is to show some previous work that was being done, and the main work within South Africa. I think the connection was with the Nyabingi House, right?
Yes, sir.
But further works was being done when Bingi Irie Alliance in a mission to Africa in 2009, representing the council now, helped to also strengthen that resolve in connecting with the community there. Now, the community within in its own realization of spirituality evolved within its natural course. but also link it to the word sounds coming from Jamaica, because the reality of Rastafari communities worldwide, they are still looking to Jamaica. You know, if you don't connect with the Jamaica, it's like something missing. And that is just naturally real because of how the intangible cultural heritage, where it originates, the powerhouse of it, the headquarters of the majority mansions, them are still located in the reality of Jamaica. The repatriation, we're there.
Yes, sir.
So the natural continuity of the advocacy is still real, very real in Jamaica. So South Africa now is caught up in a situation where how to link in the connectivity of the spirituality. And that is what is ongoing now. Within the debate of the spirituality, it is more leaning towards the Naya Bingi house within its discourses. But you're still going to have ones like the 12th tribe rising up there, albeit them rise at the 12th tribe, but not necessarily linking with the 12th tribe of Israel foundation from Jamaica. But them rise with the consciousness of being 12th tribe of Israel. Same way. That is also located in South Africa or Southern Africa. You have also Bobo Shanti consciousness that is also there. But the bulk of the reality of the spirituality is tied to the if you want to say the conscious reasoning from the Nyabingi house, which leans upon Christ and his kingly character. That is where the doctrine is more pivoted around in Southern Africa. And quite frankly, you will have that major influx, even that influence also within other communities worldwide. The Bobo is there in I various communities worldwide. But the influence now, because of the uptake, is where now this Christ in this kingly character, this scripture is given concerning the divinity of his imperial majesty. So South Africa is still linking in to connect with Jamaica, because even ancients went down to South Africa recently to try to still continue that tie, and most of those ancients were from the Bingi house. So the same, as me say, sort of doctrinal, sort of reasoning connectivity is still link up with the Bingi house. So that is basically what is underground. What is being done underground now is to try to see how these levels of representation for our Rastafari now can come together in South Africa, because of the nature of the ongoing agenda to deal with repatriation and reparation. So the onus now, even in South Africa's population, as much as how the majority there is leaning towards the Bingi house doctrinal concept, the need for all-inclusive representation is going to be foremost now to deal with repertoire justice, because that is at the table right now to be dealt with. I'm going to show you another example. Look at the GRDC in Shashemene. The GRDC is heavily 12th tribe oriented, created. But the GRDC had to farm to represent Rastafari and black, not the 12th tribe of Israel, although it went lean towards that sort of conceptualization. But in reality, it cannot represent only the 12th tribe of Israel and Shashemene. That is why it was created now to represent the community by the language. So it's a similar thing when happening in South Africa, connectivity, in the sense of what is on the table to be represented where rights of the communities are concerned. The rights of Rastafari cannot be restricted to one mansion, even if that one mansion influence the majority. The rights have to be recognized in, as just say, organized and centralized. So it is for Rastafari, individual mansion, the representative rights must represent all. If you're not representing all, then you're falling short and probably creating deals and not rights. So this is where the cautiousness in moving forward, and hence the work of councils, because there's a lot of councils that are established after the Edema, the Millennium Council in 2007. They have patterned that framework based on what was conceptualized in Jamaica and required to really move this organizing and centralizing platform forward. Because from 2001, the onus, and I will repeat it, the onus is to deal with the matter of repatriation and reparation. That is on the table for I and I to deal with. Because them lock it down with Jamaica's independence, and it is the United Nations and the efforts of the NGO that rise it back 40 years after. Because 40 years after 1961, the mission to Africa, you get 2001. So you see I and I in the wilderness coming together in this new generation, moving this thing forward. So I would say that is what is really underground in South Africa. Obviously, ones who are there would give a more deepful insight of how them liberty rise. But I know the connectivity between South Africa and Jamaica is more influenced through the Bingi House. That is for sure. Because the Nyabingi National Council, the NNC, that was established first, is really majorly linked with the Bingi House in Jamaica. The Nyabingi House. What them called Tran.
My lord. With recent court ruling affirming sacramental ganja rights for the Rastafari community, what are the next steps to ensure full protection and respect, my lord?
All right, the ganja issue, I will only state this much. I can't go into much of it. Read the council. But in the sense of when it came into the insertion, because that is what really crisscrossed the whole advocacy for repatriation and reparation. Before any ganja industry come in 2015, the whole thing was focused on Caricom first conference and second conscience of reparation. Worse, like how them put out what we help influence the 10-point agenda that have repatriation in it to be dealt with. So this is a serious matter for the community and black to deal with. When the ganja came in now in 2015, first of all, the sacramental descriptor identified the Rastafari community and the only community that has the right to sacrament. Not even the Maroons or the Indians, them, which them say history claims that is how even ganja get to come across in the West, you know. So as much as how the Indians them are complaining, so they are not recognized. Well, you never go through the atrocities that we go through as Rastafari. You never stand for it within your culture. You never brazen with it enough to go out there publicly and utilize it and declare it. Is I and I wrap our culture around it as Rastafari. So when the government now have to move to recognize this usage within the uptake of recognizing this avenue now to decriminalize ganja, they had to recognize compulsory to the Rastafari community. Because we create the chalice pipe. When you research and look up the meaning of chalice pipe, you're going to see the chillum pipe. But you're going to see the chalice pipe being defined as being created by the Rastafari community. That is on any definition books. So sacrament had to be recognized to the Rastafari community based on the reality of what was happening in Jamaica and how we were victimized even from Leonard Howard pinnacle days. Ganja as a means of usage. So because it is being declared as sacrament, no one mansion or organization has the claim to say they are in charge of, management of the whole. No. Sacrament law for Rastafari means you have to have a collective representation of this law. And this is where the council, in its first advocacy, established the Rastafari Ganja Global Company because we coined the phrase, if sugar cane bring we out, well, ganja will carry back into Africa. So the Rasta Ganja Global Company that was established to look at the industry was also registered in South Africa to deal with a nutraceutical bilateral between South Africa and Jamaica. This is how we got more strengthening with the ties with the community in South Africa and how the council got involved. The problem child in the midst of all this thing is that the government of Jamaica, when they were fashioning out the law, they created 3 applications coming out of the Minister of Justice portfolio to look at the operation of sacrament. Overrun and obviously controlled by the Minister of Justice himself, and it is still ongoing. You have exempted events, worship spaces, and cultivation, the rights to cultivation for sacramental purposes. The problem child, none of these applications identifies in law commercial activities for sacrament to operate. So only the exempted event was a window of opportunity through the discretion of the minister would possibly allow some form of commerce to take place on the exempted event. But it has to be specified within the exemption that was granted. And majority of the time from 2015 up until recently the cultivation license were issued, it was only exempted event. So legally, to this day, there is no commercial rights given for sacrament to be traded. Unlike the Volstead Act that recognized alcohol, they got exemption for alcohol to use for medicinal purpose and sacramental purpose. So the Catholic Church created sacramental wine and were able to trade that product, not for profit, because it comes under that portfolio of the church. However, we were saying that the same form of format should have been applied to ganja, but you only exempted medicinal. You did not extend it to sacramental, using the same framework, not for profit, because it's a churchical matter. And the second flaw within the law, when they issued the law, no rights were afforded to I Rastafari priesthood order for the Bobo Shanti and the Bingi house, where the tabernacles them were created for that purpose. No law. And yet still, sacrament can only exist because of the sanctification of priests. Without the sanctification of any priesthood order, you cannot have a legal substance to be recognized as a sacrament. And yet all of that is written out of the law. So what you have now, compounding this difficulty now, is the issuing by the same Minister of Justice recently, cultivation licenses for ganja for the first time. Now, how are you going to issue licenses for cultivation, which clearly will incur a cost of production, and you do not outline within the same law the rights to commerce? Automatically, that is problem. Automatically, you're setting up Rasta to run in a problem.
True.
The very Minister of Culture, refused to meet with I and I, the council, to address this matter. Because we are not even included within the cultivation licenses of rollout. No. Even from 2016, when there was an advisory committee set up to deal with the ganja under the previous administration, our applications to deal with the resurrection of East Fest and all those programs, to deal with the cultivation, to look into what could have happened with the bilateral with South Africa, lockdown and throughout, even by the advisory board that had existed at the time. So this was the combativeness that we were up against and still up against, and why we had to be complaining to the United Nations CERT, where that is concerned. But let us get back to the reality of things. Rastafari is being set up because without the viability of commercial activity to deal with the cultivation of license, then a lot of deals are going to be made behind the scene. You're going to have some people get where, some people drag in front of the court because them fine with ganja. And look at the irony now and the sadness about this thing. There are now ones within this cultivation reality being caught with ganja and are being charged. Now, the unfortunate thing, and this is what we now get ourselves in a problem with the law. Because what you have done now, when you go before the law to defend these persons now, to say they have the right for possession, right? And them forget back them ganja. Fine. But once you do that into the court now, you know, which you have done as a lawyer, you have now cemented in law that the only rights that we have for ganja and the sacrament is for only possession. Yet you have a cultivation license to process the growing of ganja. How are you going to recover that cost? Naturally. But you are telling the court, say you are not breaking no law. You have the right to possess what you cultivate. So you have now locked into the law. In the Jamaican court, say, you have only the right and the sacrament to cultivate ganja and possess it. You have no right to commerce like the church them for non-for-profit, just like how alcohol was done. So that is the problem now you have placed under the sacramental regime now. You made that rigid into the court system now, that you have only the right for possession and not the right for commerce. So to reverse all that madness now is the interjection of indigenous rights, where we stand before the United Nations claiming this as a defense to go around the atrocity that is being created by these laws through the Minister of Justice and using the court system by these lawyers to defend only possession. Because when the police them charge them with them the amount of ganja, the police charge with possession dealing in ganja. So you go to court now and take off the dealing charge and leave the right for possession. Because you have the right to possess it once you have the right to cultivate. So that is what you go prove in court. Say, no, we not sell it. We have grow it for our use. Don't care how much amount them fine, 200, 300, 400, 500 pounds. No man, no commercial activity going on. We just have grow this. Yeah man, this is a sort of, misleading operation happening in Jamaica under the sacramental provision. And we're not with it. That is madness.
Can I just interject, Majesty? Because what I also have observed is this ganja for gun trade, which I think it put the Rastafari community in a very peculiar position when things like that are being happening, my lord, and it's not Rastafari people that is involved in this ganja for gun and drugs trade, my lord. It's
Well, that, my honorable, there I have hit the nail upon the head. There's not much I man can say on top of that. Because when you start to cultivate 200, 300, 400, 500 pounds, how are you as Rastafari community when convinced now the authorities and the narco, the police them, say you are not involved in the gun for trade business?
yes.
You have no legislation to prove how you can track your commerce activities and what you are doing. And that is why we say when you utilize an indigenous portfolio as an alternative United Nations project that can be applied to the community in its operation under a closed loop operation. This is what we're fighting for. And that is why we say we don't even want to touch the sacramental settings again, you know, and pushing for this indigenous rights to separate ourselves from that madness and the mess that was created now by the Minister of Justice. That the court system now have to release 200 pounds, 300 pounds, you name it, and say it's possession. So when all of this now language of guns for, as I rightfully said, I mean, who is not going to be targeted or be you know, saying that we involved in all of this? Because check it, you know, even the recent returning of Ganja, the majority, some of it involved just non-Rastafari cultivating it. But them two, them linking with the sacramental provision now, them is underneath our, in a sense of Rastafari, you know, operation. But
Yes,
it's not
sir.
Rastafari.
My
So
lord.
that natural question that I ask is real. And don't ask how much licenses are issued out there under sacramental provision. We don't even want to go there, so we say, well, we'll make sure take ourselves far from that operation. And them can point we towards that, because when that really go down, you know, and fester in such a way, I don't even want to be near it. Our name card.
What would the what message would the I send to, like, you know, policymakers about, you know, the cultural and religious significance of ganja within the Rastafari community?
We are ready, and I give thanks for that question, because to really answer that, I am on, believe it or not, under the first operation, when it came into action and activity, was part of the board of directors of the Cannabis Licensing Authority. Up until 2019, I was representing the community, the Rastafari community, under the council unit. Under that framework was the proposal to tie in the bilateral with South Africa, right? Under the nutraceutical, under the AD program, the United Nations AD program for Indigenous people's rights. That is what was going to be engaged, and then it never really happened, where the pilot project was done. Yeah, you see? So we had already stipulated all of that framework for the Rastafari community to be uptaken under an indigenous right portfolio, read the AU program, under the AD program under the United Nations. That way, it will recognize other indigenous communities and not just Rastafari, because the bilateral with South Africa identified 3 communities: the Rastafari community, the Maroon community, and the revival community, and their equivalent to the nature of the culture linked back to South Africa. So we were already moving this indigenous rights portfolio to be recognized, because it comes under a United Nations framework. The beauty of the AD program, under this indigenous platform, would have automatically uptake sacrament, because your sacramental rights come even underneath your indigenous rights. It is automatically going to be included and uptaken. So you're not only going to be dealing with the cultural aspect of ganja as a sacrament, you're going to also deal with the merchandising of the spin-off of it. So all of that uptake is under your indigenous reality. And we have submitted all of this information to the government to be addressed. But what is the problem? We went on a blockade. And as I sent forward the information, what we had to report to the United Nations search is what we are trying to unshackle, to really put this AD program and demands where the ganja and the indigenous right must be deposited in the reality of this representation for commercial viability. We call it the rights for economic inclusivity, because we have no economic inclusion as Rastafari presently in law where this ganja industry is concerned, separate and apart from the medicinal framework licensing. So in order for we as Rastafari to get involved with the commerce, we have to go through the medicinal framework under the CLA. So it was only the AD program under the CLA monitoring that we were pushing to get the Rastafari and indigenous communities to get involved with the commerce rightfully. And that was not. It's being looked into now, but it is not being rolled out officially. And that is where we are pressing, where our demands are concerned. Indigenous rights.
Majesty, my lord. Yes, I give thanks, Bobo. A few more questions for the eye. Recently, I shared a video on my platform. I don't know if the eye want to go on that topic, because the reasoning, is such a powerful reasoning so far. Don't want to really go into no form of what do I call it? Negativity or anything like that, or derogatory, or you know what I mean. But
Yes.
there was a few things mentioned. The I respond honorably and respectfully. Is there anything else that the I wanted to clarify where that is regard? In that regard, my lord.
Okay, give thanks for bringing up that subject matter. I had responded it within a voice note setting, acknowledging even what the Honorable Priest Brown had said, which is basically a repeating of what I had indicated, how that happened in the sense of what we had to be doing from 2003, global reason, the permission that was given to represent these vital issues for the Rastafari community in responding to the United Nations. Because the Rastafari global reason of 2003, we were there defending this integrity within a panel discussion. And the Congress was also on that panel while we were addressing this matter. So the evidence is already there. The unfortunate thing now, as I said before, all of this work had to now become collectivized because of what is required now from the Durban and the matter of how it has to, when Africa said it can't deal with the splinter group, too much splinter group. So you have to concise now, and the community is forced now to organize and centralize with this reality. There's no going around it, because this thing coming like prophecy now, The command of the emperor comes to prophecy now, because that is what I and I have to be doing now, moving towards organizing and centralizing. So the command is a prophecy now, because that don't say we don't forget to that. So in putting all of this information, because these works were being done from the Rastafari Global Region 2003, all of that presentation from those panel discussions have to come together as a document. And we were moving this thing representing this agenda for the Rastafari community to compile such a document. The opportunity of it, though, came when the council was formed in 2007. So in addressing the comments that were being made, right? What we had to do, unfortunately, when the incident, I think that interview that was being done with Priest Brown involved, is it the one with Russ Jr. and Eagles, just to confirm?
Yes, I.
All right. Well, it had to bring the clarity of how that document was completed. And the first draft of the Rastafari Nation Fundamental Rights to Repatriation and Reparation, that first draft compilation was done in February 2009, right? We had to take it up and complete that document. We meaning the members of the executives and directors of the council. Because unfortunately, as you say, you don't really want to go into any bad taste, but his removal from within the executive caused us, the remaining executive and directors, to complete that draft that he was assisting to construct. So because of the discrepancies and what had happened to cause him to be removed from the executive position, no fault of my own, because I wasn't a director. I never have no power with that. We had to continue the work. Because at the time that was developing now, Ras Jr. Mani, who was the chairperson for the council, was involved with the same reparation commission that was going through now, headed by Dr. Professor Barry Chavans, activizing out there town hall meetings, looking at how to collect information from the community in addressing the Durban. And that was 2009, all of them things I got you. So we had to get this document completed, finish it up. The remaining executive and directors, I myself included now, to compile it, very much involved in the compilation of it personally. But as a, working reality within the camp. So all of the information now that was out there bantering now, coming out of the 2000, we brought together. My personal input, I'm going to stress that, is the work that I was doing prior to the council, because I can share some things with the eye.
Yes,
Not
sir.
only was I man at the global Rastafari Global Region of 2003, I did a presentation at a UNESCO conference and reparation addressing globalization and the African diaspora. That was in 2004. In 2005, we had the South Africa Union Jamaica conference took place at the conference center. I went there and made representation there. And finally, in 2007, the 107th anniversary or the summit of the Pan-African Summit took place in Jamaica. I made a presentation there as well, where my work is concerned, demanding this advocacy, following the command to deal with the fundamental reality of the Constitution, freedom, redemption, and international repatriation. Leaving out of the Congress, there is no other work for I and I to do. That is the fundamental contract, if you want to call it that, with the Congress. But not only that, it is the reality of the Rastafari creed that I and I should be living as Rastafari sons and daughters, which the popular version by the Bingi House is Prince and Princess shall yard out at the house of bandits. We Ethiopians shall stretch forth our hands, and that is repatriation. So how you as a Rastaman now defend that from day one? So the construct and the conclusion of that document had to be done to deal with the programs that were happening on the ground. So the compilation of that document was concluded by I and I. You know, the existing or the remainder of the executive directors in 2009. It is that same document that was presented to Prime Minister Ganja when he, as the chairman for Caricom now, held that first conference on reparation for Caricom. So I personally went down with Jaboni Wheeler, I should say even giving him honorary title because he has honorary titles OMCD official as an honorary citizenship, and he is the honorary chairman that was invited down there, and he became the first cultural ambassador for Caricom, for reparation. They bestowed that on Jabi in 2013. So we went down, and I personally presented that document to Caricom with a cover letter dealing with the matter of insertion and demands by the community. And it is out of these representations by the community, because other ones did present documents from other, community groups, that caused repatriation for the Caricom 10-point agenda. So in the defense of work, what Ayman was personally, and I'm still personally involved in, at no time can I deal with the matter of redress to look at gaining only redress to Jamaica. That is not the mission of Rastafari. It is not the work that I was commanded to do, nor was even the work that Ayman was doing when I left Babylon and have all of these meetings down we call it now, May Pen at the courthouse, dealing with these rallies for Rastafari. It is all about Back to Africa, my right poem, the very book, the book back of my book, The Rastafari Messengers of the Ages, which I published in 2015, speaks to the rights for I and I to return to our own vine and fig tree, the first generation of Africans. So every aspect of Ayman work is dealing with the Rastafari creed to the T. For I and I personal reality, can't shift that. And today now, we are still doing that work in front of the AU and Caricom Summit, looking to deal with this matter of rights of return, continuing that work that was presented in 2013 and also 2014 at Caricom First and Second Conference on Reparation. So at all times, the program for Rastafari is being championed for the rights of return, taking up the 1958 agenda for total emancipation, demanding repatriation. So that is what the demand is all about, documented rights. There is no demand for no redress in Jamaica, because we will never, as Rastafari sons and daughters, give up a continent for them little slave islands. Yeah?
No time
impossible. See. So without any apology, the work speaks for itself. And if anyone and whoever know Ayman and they know Ayman, know for the fact that that is what Ayman defends to the T by documents and by my personal liberty as published by Ayman Book 2015 without any apology.
Majesty. My final question to the eye, my lord, Zane, is this. Of recent, I don't know if the eye is aware of the Elders Council within the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress. Ones are looking and amending of the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress constitution, my lord. How the I see that, if the eye is aware of it anyway?
Well, I'm going to be very and have to be truthful on the matter. This is for this very reason, because to take up that constitutional reform, you're talking about the levels of parliamentary representation. You know, that's a very serious matter to deal with. And for my part, because of this mission that I was declared to do and maintain the integrity within the office of the prophet, this is where my work is cut out for Iman, because that is where I am right now, affixed to deal with it. Any form of amendment to the constitution to reflect eldership, that's a matter that I can't even address or even give a comment on, because it is out of my portfolio, so to speak. And I will just maintain the integrity of trying to work on behalf of the people's right, because that is what was issued by King Emmanuel Charles Edward in 1991, the petition to the OAU. We are now at the AU levels. Hopefully, we want to see that petition presented. And that is the reality. We're just starting now, you know, at reaching the AU summit levels, where they're looking at repertoire justice. So the onus now in Iman linking forward to the parliamentarian, because we have the contacts same way, is to really connect with them where this issue is concerned, because I share the information. This is the subject matter that Iman involved with work. They know Iman said, this is my, you know, connectivity with work. So in regards to the Elders Council, I don't really know how to respond to that. It is something that Iman just have to observe within its development. But the foundation, hopefully, as I said before, will maintain the integrity of what is now even currently at the table to look at repertoire justice, because that is what I have been advocating for decades, from 1958, you know, repatriation, the telegram, everything. Well, it's at the doorstep now. So we need a voice. We need to see something like 2014 England again in a Jamaica. And it kind of strange. What is concerning to IMA is that the only levels of collective vocal demand as Rastafari only manifest in 2011, August 1st. When we come together to try to deal with this program, the collective support of the August 1st Emancipation March. I say, look man, coming out of the global reason of 2003 and where the thing reached now, AU Summit, Africa, so more activity, more rallies, more, you know, rallying around these things must be the order. Because I create this, I live it to this. And now that it reached to the zenith, we can't say, oh, this is not a subject matter to be collectivized within our advocation. So I would just say, observing what is going to take place within this Elder Council development, and hopefully it is for the best result, but in the sense of how it has to be addressed, that is strictly up where the parliamentary levels and the rights of the constitution and representation, that is where it is at right now. So hopefully it will work out for the best at all times, because we have serious work being done right now at the AU, UN, Caricom levels, leadership levels.
Majesty. Yes, Honorable Priest. Well, I want to give thanks for the eye taking the time, my lord. Any closing word that you want to share with the world at large?
Yeah, we do give thanks that we were able to be you know, blessed with this interview from the eye. Do give thanks for the effort. I want to tell you, say, I call going on an interview. I know my brother Ras Manga, who we did run the Cutting Edge Cultural Identity in a Maypen times. Him have a station now in a US. Some more time with the like that. But in the sense of going it into the levels of details of what this is covering now, you know, we really give thanks to be able to expose the work that I and I involve in, which is paramount at this time. And this is what I'm saying, program like these now to bring the awareness. Obviously we are in WhatsApp groups, natural, but to deal with media rights programs of this nature is what is essential now in driving home the works of Pan-Africanism, in driving home the reality of repertoire justice now, the Durban Declaration, where it reaches, and what is necessary for I and I, the claimants. This is the most important thing. I and I, as the Africans, are the claimants, whether we in the diaspora or not. When you're talking about the transatlantic colonialism and chattel slavery, it's I and I voice must be heard. Institutions are coming to I and I for information. So my final word of advice, just like how the community saw the necessary to organize and centralize, me I taught the Rastafari community by creating a council coming out of this global Rastafari reasoning. It is essential that the African diaspora, the African community, find ways how to organize and centralize and institutionalize themselves to become councils in representing our cause, that the very redress for the damages, we are sitting at the table as institutions ourselves, community institutions. That is not just the universities and the ministers and the agents of government that is going to be representing I and I cause. Because as the victims, we are the first priority where redress is concerned. And if we allow institutions to represent us because of silence from our part, then who is to be blamed? Who can I and I blame? And the matter is now, to really deal with. So that is my word going out, final word, that let us move collectively, organize and centralize, as His Imperial Majesty said, when it comes to the Rastafari movement issues. Take up back, we put the proposal to take up back the whole Back to Africa mission, what the technical report had identified for the movement, looking at Shashemene, if Shashemene have become another setting because of how it is now. But in the essence of things, it is what we need to pressure the leaders now, out of Caricom, out of what is going to be developed now, to take back the charge and represent the people who are now moving to sit at the table as councils and institutions. Do give thanks.
Majesty, my lord. Glorify, honorable. Give thanks, Bobo. Such a powerful presentation, my lord. I could have done another 2-3 hours still, reasoning with the High Majesty. So,
Yeah.
Give
Well,
thanks.
as I say, give thanks for allowing Iman the opportunity to really set the record straight. Because a lot of, we don't want these things to derail what is necessary to be done now. And the clarity is necessary for transparency and accountability. And every work that I and I involved in, this is the one in going out. It is documented. So if you want to come good, present your document, and we will work. I just say that.
Yes,
Thanks.
honorable priest. Glorify, my lord.
Yeah,
And
prophet,
more love, more strength, and our guidance and protection. Same way upon the high journey, my lord. And I hope that we can continue to do things like these and even greater things than this, my lord, going forward, majesty. So give thanks for taking the time, honorable prophet Greg. It's an honor and a pleasure, my lord. Holy Emmanuel I, King Selassie I, Jah Rastafari.
And the honor is Iman. And most definitely we will be continuing because the agenda out there is forcing I and I to continue. Let your work. Give thanks.
Rastafari. Peace and love, my lord.
Respect. That's it.
Rastafari.
smash that subscribe button. See you on the next video.
I just start the mindset.